So as you might have seen, I've recently uploaded my Photoshop brushes to Kofi. So I'm gonna make a brief video on how I use them, because it's very generic brushes and each person have their own style and it's easy to use brushes differently. So first of all, I have my brushes here and for my UI, I kind of like to make it big. So I have an overview of all the brushes. So I'll just go over here and disable brush stroke and brush name. So I have a be even better overview of everything, because I like to see every brush as I work. So first I have my basic pencils and basic brushes, and it's pretty self-explanatory. I think same with this one, round, opacity. Of course, everybody has to use that at some point. And this is a bit of both. Yeah, so I'm just briefly gonna go through each of them. These ones are pretty basic, so these are gonna go by pretty fast. A bit of texture. I rarely use this because it's very low res. And some soft brushes. They're kind of good for pencils and stuff. Yeah, it's just whatever you float your boat, really. It's whatever preference you have. Okay. And now for the exciting stuff. These are the primary brushes. These I rarely use because I'm mostly a painter. But these are very important for me. So I've organized it in a way that's structured and makes sense for me. So all the primary brushes I use is at the top, while things I don't use as much is at the bottom. But they're still pretty essential for achieving some effects I want. So all of these ones are pretty dense, I'd say. You don't have to press hard, because I hate pressing hard when drawing, especially drawing 8 hours a day. You don't want to press hard in a tablet, because it just hurts your wrist in the end. I kind of like that you have to press lightly to get a solid stroke. It makes it more like gouache, if you've tried that, where it's very, very solid strokes you do, but you don't have to press that hard. So what I like about these two brushes is there's slight texture on it. And with this one, there's like the size difference you can put in. And it's just really nice. I have some tilt as well. It's not essential to have the tilt sensitivity on, but you can see I can make some really interesting shapes with this. I can make a circle, but I can also carve it out. And depending on the angle of this brush, I can make some really interesting edges that is hard to do with the round brush. So I'm really proud of this brush because it's one I've made myself. I hope you'll do good with it. Yeah, see, like you can get some really interesting shapes with it. And this one is the one that started as this brush, but I changed it in the end to match more of my needs. If I have one takeaway from all of these brushes, it's not really about brushes, it's more about what kind of needs you have. So yeah, and you need to change those brushes according to your needs, because everybody works differently. So this one is more basic. It doesn't change its size at all. I use this a lot because it's a very predictable brush. Sometimes this one is kind of unpredictable if you don't know the tilt is on. And this one is just overall, you get some nice, quick and dirty strokes. Don't quote me on that. And we have a more solid version of it. Again, I hate to press hard. I want my colors to appear immediately, and I want that opacity to show in, like very opaque brushstrokes. So I use this to plug in the shapes. And you see that what's cool about this one is to create a gradient with this brush, you do like an upwards motion, and the sides here are sharp edges, while the top and bottom of the stroke is the soft edges. So to create a gradient, you kind of draw this motion, because there's like a flow opacity on it. And this is very good if you want to achieve that organic brush feel. These are like almost like knife broad brush tools. It's also very opaque. And these are just very good for adding quick, interesting shapes. You see, like, that looks pretty interesting to me. I don't know, if you want to do maybe a spaceship or something, you can get some really cool shapes with it. Sharp edges as well. It's quite good for blocking those kind of shapes in. This one, you know, some of them I also have just to randomize my brush strokes. Sometimes it's good to just switch it up and play with new brushes and play around with different effects, really. And one more. And I made it so like all of these are pretty opaque, which means you don't have to press that hard to make them. But as we go to this area, it becomes more transparent, the brushes. It's more wispy, which is good for overlaying the details. And I like to work with these kind of brushes in the shadows. Yeah, so maybe like here I would use it, like in this piece I recently drew. I would begin to draw with a transparent brush here, because if I began to draw with this brush, it would look way too sharp and kind of weird. And it's also good for like glows and stuff. And mist. So now we're slowly going to more transparent brushes. And this again is just different feels and styles. You can pick a random brush and pick and choose what effect you want. And now we go to this brush, probably one of my favorite brushes. Not because of this, but in Photoshop there's a feature called MIXA brush. Go in here, and this is gonna blow your mind. I use this basically everywhere I want quick details. So you see here, I used it. I mean, look at it. It just looks super interesting with this brush. And I like to use it where the light meets the shadow. Like here. Let's just take this paint closer here. And you can see how quick details it can create. And depending on the brush direction, you get like different effects. And let's say you want more like details here. And you want a pillar here. I mean, this is just insane. Like once you use this, it's like, it's essential to use this in speed paints for me now, because it's so easy to make details. And you can see how quickly I can work this in. And for more like brush inception, you can color pick this with the mixer brush for even more details. And now you get even more crazy stuff going on. Like, look at this. Do some beams. I think I used it. I basically used this everywhere. I also used it here. You can see when you make it really big. Kind of have that effect. Okay, let's go back to a normal brush again. And now we're just going to round brushes. It's a bit of a mix between the transparent and opaque brushes. Beginning to go down to brushes I don't use as much. It's mostly the most opaque ones I use. This one is just, you know, it's normal airbrush. I don't usually paint with this. It's more for effects and filters I use it with. And after this, I have a whole section for the textures, in case I want that in my paintings. So some textured knife effects, textured flat brush, maybe it's old flat brush. Textures. More textures. This one is great for maybe trees and rocks. This one is really solid too. I like this one brush. You can go to MIXA brush and use that again. It creates some really cool effects. Maybe for some grass. And now we get to, yeah, the last sections. Basically just effects and filters and smoke. Some effect brushes. And now this is some other of my favorite brushes. I would be careful using these in some illustrations because it really depends on your style. So these brushes are if you want some very, very painterly. I use this quite a lot if I want a painting that's gonna look like gouache or oil paint. You can see like this, the canvas textures on these. So that's why you might not like these depending on your style, but I quite like it. You see the color jitter is super nice, and it's very, very clear. You create both sharp edges and soft edges with it. And if you see in all my paintings, I have this color jitter because I use this brush quite a lot. See it here. You see it in the clouds as well. And you see like the mix of the MIXA brush here plus this brush here, which gives off a super interesting effect in my opinion. That's also how I draw clouds, is coloring with the MIXA brush. And you can see it's very easy to draw clouds. I might make another video on just MIXA brush alone with all these things I want to talk about. Yeah, so that's that kind of brush. And I have this one. So all of these brushes here is painting brushes that has that oil canvas effect on it and color jitter. And see, this one is just very good for grass, but it's very noisy, so you have to be careful with the texture and size of your canvas if you want to use this one. And same with this. This one's good for trees. Yeah, this one is just a very good textured line. It's not necessarily for shapes. I use it more for lines and this. I think I use it for this as well. If I want to kind of suggest a line, but not really suggest it anyway, I could also use it for this part. And it would look pretty much in the same style as the rest of the paintings. But yeah, be careful with using these brushes here, because if you use it, you're probably going to use it across the whole painting. Otherwise, it's going to look out of place and it's going to look a bit weird. And this brush is mostly just if you want some color jitter in the surface. Good if you want to break up the surface details. Make some quick color jitter effects. I see it's already beginning to become pretty interesting by adding this. And lastly, some effect brushes. This is more for like bloom and stuff. If you want some glowy stuff. I really rarely use these, so that's why it's at the bottom. And the silk brush here as well. If you want some thin material, cloth, maybe a jellyfish, some particles, a lighting effect. So all of these already have the 0% wetness. As you can see, it's basically the same, but I've just made like a little folder where you can easily access them if you don't want to go over here and change the MIXA brush and put the wetness to 0. But it's all here. And you can change the wetness. I rarely do this because I like the effect of 0% wetness, but you can change the wetness to maybe like 7% to get like a really soft effect. Almost like you're mixing it with oil. And it creates this super cool glassy oil paint effect. And I use it quite a bit with this one. You can see this oily, smooth effect. It's not round brush, it's more, yeah, it's this MIXA brush that kind of has, it has the streakiness of a normal oil paint brush, but there's still a nice softness to it. So it's really good if you want to have a sharp focal point, but make everything else soft. Okay, we're soon at the finish line. Same with all these. You can basically play around. It's the same principle. These are not as logical. It's kind of whatever you feel for. But majority of the time I use this one. And these are just random shapes I made. These are more like for concepting and stencils. If you want some quick and dirty shapes. And these kind of brushes work fantastically if you go into the brush presets over here and change the spacing. And you can see some really interesting shapes coming out from that. And you can see in this painting, I use it quite a bit, the spacing. I just changed it and you could suddenly get some really nice details without doing much work at all. So this is basically my playground. I like to make a bunch of different stencils, and sometimes delete some, sometimes I add some new ones, depending on the project. Add some more stuff. You can even rotate these. And you can even add some opacity to it. This adds some shape difference. You can see it for yourself, it's very versatile. Same with this. This one I need to remove, but here you go, if you get a free stencil of a building. I wouldn't use this one, I don't know why I added it, but it's there. It's foliage. I made these myself, but I would suggest whenever you make some foliage, you should make these yourself, because it's very easy to find something on the internet and then realize everybody else is using the same brush. Especially with these kind of stencils. But it's, yeah, just so you can play around with it. And these ones I also used recently for the top of some buildings. You could probably also use it here, for example. These stencils, and make some and turn on opacity and suggest some buildings on top here. Of course, you have to kind of work it in, but you can see how much work you can do in a simple amount of time. And yeah, that's it for everything. If you have any questions for how you need to use the MIXA brush, how spacing works, shape dynamics, how you turn on color jitter and stuff, feel free to ask. This was just a little video on how I use the brushes. Okay, I hope you'll enjoy the brushes, and see you.